off a series of tweets again today saying that Democrats are refusing to secure our borders and calling on Republicans to go nuclear if necessary and pass tougher immigration laws. The president explaining his position yesterday.
Mexico has got to help us at the border. And a lot of people are coming in because they want to take advantage of DACA. And we're going to have to really see. They had a great chance. The Democrats blew it. They had a great chance. But we'll have to take a look. But Mexico has got to help us at the border. They flow right through Mexico. They send them into the United States. Can't happen that way anymore.
So Team Fox coverage now live in L.A. William Longinus watching that caravan story. But we start with Kevin Corke at the White House. And what's behind the renewed intensity on this issue? Why now, Kevin?
Good morning, my friend. Listen, make no mistake about it. This is about political power. It's about timing ahead of the midterms. And, Bill, I think, quite frankly, it's about putting pressure where it ought to be. Of course, the congressional lawmakers on Capitol Hill. DACA is dead, says the president on Twitter, as we take you to, once again, his favorite social media platform, where once again he is proclaiming the opportunity has gone past. He says DACA is dead because the Democrats didn't care or act. And now everyone wants to get onto the DACA bandwagon. He continues, no longer works. Must build wall and secure our borders with proper border legislation. He wraps up by saying Democrats want no borders, hence drugs and crime. Now, to be clear, DACA applies to those who are specifically brought here illegally as children and have known no other country besides this one, which makes the failure to act all the more surprising for a great many lawmakers. Clearly, the president talking about a couple of issues, what to do about DACA and how best to secure the border and keep others from streaming into our country illegally. Now, of course, what we showed you earlier was the president on Twitter. Now we'll share what his press secretary said this morning on Fox.
The president made multiple offers on DACA. He wanted to see something get done, and Democrats refused to actually put something on the table or work with the president to get anything done. They wanted to use DACA recipients as political pawns. I think what's happened here is incredibly sad.
Incredibly sad indeed. Now, other than the Easter egg presentation, which will be taking place on the South Lawn, we don't expect to hear the president talking about this on camera today, but if that changes, Bill, of course, we'll pass it along to you.
All right. Where does the White House go from here on DACA then, Kevin?
Well, I think it's all about negotiation. I mean, let's be clear. No matter what the White House has to say about, you know, somehow this won't ever happen, I think the real feeling here in Washington is the White House will have to get together with congressional lawmakers. They have to figure out a way to apply the pressure on those lawmakers, because moving forward, Bill, if they don't, keep in mind this could be a major issue again in the midterms, especially down ballot. It may have nothing to do with 2020 if the Republicans lose the House and the Senate in 2018. And so clearly the negotiation, I think, is what's going to happen moving forward. We'll keep an eye on it for you. But for now,
and we shall.
Back to you.
You got it. Thank you, Kevin. Enjoy the Easter roll today. Thank you.
But in the meantime, as you heard, President Trump is reacting to this report that the caravan of migrants from Central America is now making its way to enter the U.S. either illegally or seek asylum. William Longinus is live for us in Los Angeles with more on that. William?
Well, Heather, it is legitimate according to the Border Patrol and my sources and the Mexican press. The number's not that unusual. It's 1,500, only that the group is traveling together. They're advertising their journey on Facebook, raising money online, and instead of each family hiring their own smuggler, well, the trip was arranged by the group Pueblos Sin Fronteras, which offers humanitarian assistance to refugees. The group started out about a week ago on Mexico's southern border, 80% Honduran, men, women, and children. They've been walking, but depending on which train they take, they'll end in the U.S. about a week or two. The group will then literally turn themselves in and claim asylum, that they have a credible fear of persecution if forced to return home.
You got to remember, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the smugglers are coaching them and telling them exactly what they need to say. So all they have to do is come here and claim that they fear to go back to their country, and they don't have to provide any evidence whatsoever.
And that's where the problem happens. They'll get stopped by the Border Patrol. In 88% of the cases, an asylum officer will determine they do deserve to see an immigration judge. But because of the backlog that we have in the courts, that could take months or years. What happens in the meantime? If they're released, and there are rules about how long you can keep families and children in detention, the likelihood they will not be seen again. So the president tweeted today that, quote, Mexico has the absolute power not to let these large caravans of people enter the country. They must stop them at their northern border, which they can do because their border laws work not to allow them to pass through into our country, which has no effective border laws. He also said that Congress must immediately pass border legislation, use the nuclear option, if necessary, to stop this massive inflow of drugs and people. Border Patrol agents, ICE, are great, but the weak Democratic laws or Dem laws don't allow them to do their job. Act now. Congress, our country, is being stolen. So, Heather, I have been to Tapachula in Chiapas on the Guatemalan-Mexican border where this journey began. There is some Mexican military there, but it's pretty sporadic and thin. The Mexicans try to stop them from getting on the train, but it's dangerous, but they're pretty much overwhelmed. So eventually they're going to reach here. The question is going to have become, what do we do when they hit the goal or the border and claim asylum? Are they kept in detention, but they have lawyers, and will they be released?
Yeah.
Back to you.
Lots of questions. William Lajeunesse live for us. Thank you.
In the meantime, 6 minutes past the hour now, there is new information this morning, a new reaction on the AG's decision not to appoint a second special counsel to investigate misconduct alleged to the FBI and Department of Justice. Here is Daryl Issa with Maria on Easter Sunday morning.
I think what he's doing is giving credibility to the fact that he's looking for the truth, not quickly trying to jump to something to find scapegoats. He will, in my opinion, though, end up with an outside entity that has to deal with some of the rotted activity of people still at the Department of Justice and the FBI.
So that from yesterday, Byron York today, chief political correspondent, Washington Examiner, and a Fox News contributor. Good Monday to you.
Good morning.
Live and in person in New York. I like it. You say there's a more remarkable aspect to Sessions' letter. What's that?
Well, I think what Representative Issa was reacting to was a closer reading of the Sessions' letter. It is correct that Sessions said he's not going to appoint a special counsel, but Sessions also said, I've been looking into this for months. He directed their attention to a letter that a deputy of Sessions wrote to Congress in November, and it said, while we don't appoint a special counsel, there's the opportunity to make, quote, special arrangements inside the Justice Department for an in-house investigation.
That's a 5-month matter at least, right?
That's right.
Where he's been looking at this.
Sessions said that senior prosecutors have been looking at this at least through since November, and Sessions has been checking regularly with John Huber, that U.S. attorney in Utah who was appointed to address this. So, no, the lawmakers have not gotten the special counsel they wanted, but they have found out that Sessions has not been ignoring their concerns.
Okay, now House investigators, people like Trey Gowdy and Bob Goodlatte, would argue the law does not allow you to interview former employees or government employees who no longer work at the DOJ, and that's a sticking point.
Well, they are talking about the Inspector General's investigation. Remember, there is an Inspector General inside the Justice Department. He's about to release this big report on how they handled the Clinton email investigation. Did you know the Inspector General has a staff of 470?
I found that.
It is a big office.
That's right.
And so you're going to have that, and that Inspector General cannot go outside. It just can only deal with people inside the Justice Department. But these prosecutors in this special arrangement that Sessions was talking about can indeed do that.
Got it. So we don't know if they have found crumbs yet or a sandwich or full on. But in time, I do believe. Quickly on the DACA matter, do you think we are frozen legislatively now up until the midterm?
Well,
What's your read on that?
There's this sense that Congress has done all it's going to do and nothing else happens until the midterms. But it is the fact that the president is talking to lawmakers about some sort of DACA arrangement, some of whom are advising him. Drop some of the other special requirements, agree to a simple deal. Legalization and a path to citizenship for some or all of the DACA recipients in exchange for all the money, $25 billion for a wall, put in a trust fund, they're ready to use.
Could that pass this Congress?
Well, I've talked to some lawmakers who said yes, who said you could get a certain number of Democrats who would agree to this. There'll be some Republicans who would never agree to any legalization for the current DACA recipients. But there would be some Democrats, especially those in vulnerable states, who would agree to wall funding.
Byron, thanks.
Thank you,
You're
Bill.
welcome in New York anytime.
Great to be here.
Just leave the snow back from wherever
brought it for you.
it came. Thank you, Byron. We'll see you later. How you doing, Heather?
Yeah, that's crazy that it's snowing outside.
That's right.
Again.
Only for now.
Yeah. Well, coming up, a desperate search is underway right now for a 13-year-old boy who may have fallen into a drainage ditch. What authorities are telling us right now.
Also, China hitting back against the president's tariffs, what it could mean for American companies. Charles Payne is on deck to answer that. Looking forward to Charles, plus this today.
By the way, we're knocking the hell out of ISIS. We'll be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now. Very soon. Very soon.
Well, you heard him right there. The president says it's time for the U.S. to get out of Syria, as some key lawmakers, including Lindsey Graham, say not so fast. General Jack Keane weighs in.
It'd be the single worst decision the president could make. We got ISIL on the ropes. You don't want to let them off the ropes, remove American soldiers.
A Fox News alert for you on a frantic search for a 13-year-old boy who may have fallen into a drainage ditch in Los Angeles. Now, there are reports coming in right now from the L.A. Fire Department that the boy has been found alive. The teen was with at least 2 family members yesterday playing at a park when he fell.
There were 4 to 6 kids playing around in the empty shack. One was jumping on top of a wooden plank, perhaps not knowing that it led into a pipe, into a draining pipe. The plank gave, the wood broke, and the kid fell right through it.
Now, the boy was identified as Jesse Hernandez. At least 100 firefighters and crews, they were positioned downstream to try and rescue him. The ditch feeds into the Los Angeles River. Apparently, he was found alive about a mile east of where he was last seen.
When it comes to Syria, do not read the Obama playbook. This is the Obama playbook. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. This is a disaster in the making. All of his military advisors have said we need to leave troops in Syria to work with the Kurds, calm down the conflict between Turkey and the Kurdish fighters who have helped us, make sure that Raqqa does not fall back into the hands of ISIL.
Big warning now. Senator Lindsey Graham telling President Trump not to pull out of Syria too early. This after the administration freezing more than $200 million in promised aid to help rebuild that country. Jack Keane, retired 4-star general, chairman for the Institute of Study of War, and a Fox News strategic analyst. How you doing, General? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
You. I know you don't like this suggestion, and part of your commentary goes like this. How we end a war is more important than how we begin it. What do you think's happening here?
Well, first of all, I think freezing the money is a good decision because the Saudis were supposed to ante up $4 billion to help with the recovery in Syria. They haven't anteed up a dime. So the president wants to hold back until the Sunnis do what they're supposed to do, the Sunni Arabs. I think that makes some sense. But in terms of pulling out the troops, I mean, we've learned this lesson before. It's not sufficient just to win the conflict or win the war. You got to win the peace as well, Bill. What happened in Iraq is Bush won the war against the al-Qaeda in Iraq, and Obama lost the peace when he pulled the troops out. He did the same thing in Libya. We deposed Gaddafi. New government comes in, needs help to put down the radicals. We say no, and the radicals take down the government. We lost the peace there as well. What we need to do here is there's 3,000 fighters, ISIS fighters, Bill, still in Syria and Iraq, and the leaders of ISIS are in the southeastern part of Syria. We got to clean that up.
Why don't you just take them out? I mean, you have been an advocate of taking out ISIS in eastern Syria for 4 years. Yes. I mean, why are they still there?
We took them out in northeastern Syria, in Raqqa, where the caliphate was, where the territory was. And that was great work, and my hat's off to everybody that did that. But we need to finish it. We need to clean it out. If we don't, if we pull the troops out, it's almost a certainty, Bill, that ISIS will reemerge. And the results of that reemergence, their barbarism on the move again, will own that. And that would be an absolute tragedy.
So you are against removing the 3,000 American forces, mostly special op. You think the $200 million price tag right now about the aid, perhaps it's a negotiating ploy to get Saudi Arabia and others to pony up. But Sarah Sanders was asked just an hour ago about your position from the White House and said this, sir.
That's why he was so strong on pushing people to give more in the NATO process and making sure that the United States wasn't carrying the water for everybody. Look, we want to be involved, we want to help, but at the same time, we want other people to step up and put a little skin in the game, and that's what the president's talking about.
Well, your reaction on that, General?
Well, I agree with that, but I don't believe we should pull the troops out. The other thing is, if we pull the troops out, we de facto just turn Syria over to the Russians, along with the Iranians and the Hezbollah. And it's the Iranians and the Hezbollah who are constructing right now a military buildup in Syria against Israel. And that means on the horizon there's potential war with Israel and the Hezbollah and Lebanon. That's the road we're heading. And the other thing I think implies here, last summer the president made an historic visit to Saudi Arabia. 55 leaders were present. And he said this, a paraphrase of his comments: "I will stand with you against the Iranians, the #1 strategic threat in the region, and I will assist you to drive out the violent extremists where the Middle East is the breeding ground for it." Pulling out of Syria is going in the opposite direction. We just renewed the relationship with the Sunnis. It was Obama who abandoned the Sunnis for a relationship with Iran. This would be a step, in my judgment, in the wrong direction. Let me add one other thing.
We kept troops in Bosnia for 10 years. I think a lot of people would not even be aware of that. But you think of the countless examples of Somalia, Libya, Iraq, and Vietnam where those decisions were made to get out early, and I know that you think militarily that's the wrong move. Last word on all that, General.
Yeah, well, those are examples of places where we pulled out early, where we stayed in Germany, in Japan, in Italy post-World War II, in Korea post-Korean War, and as you noted, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, that situation became stabilized. They recovered properly. I'm not talking about nation building in Syria yet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to have stability, and they need to have some recovery taking place, and we don't want ISIS to come back.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Jack Keane, come on back, okay?
Okay.
Thank
Good talking to you, Bill.
You bet. Heather.
Still to come, President Trump continuing his attacks on Amazon, saying that the world's largest online retailer should face more taxes and regulations. Charles Payne is here with his take on that, plus this.
Congressional investigations leak like the Gossip Girls. I mean, they're terrible, and I would be telling you that if I were staying in Congress.
Might be the quote of the morning. Trey Gowdy voicing his support for Bob Mueller, saying he can do what Congress cannot, and that is conduct a serious investigation. Jason Chaffetz reacts to that coming up shortly.
The president knows that we're billions of dollars in a trade deficit with China. He's tired of us being taken advantage of. They've taken our intellectual property, and the president's going to fight back, and he's going to push back. But we want to be able to work with them to make sure that we're getting a good deal and that we're not taking advantage of.
And that was White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders earlier today amid growing concerns of a trade war as China announces new tariffs on more than 100 American-made products, hitting back against President Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. So let's bring in Charles Payne, the host of Making Money, weeknights on the Fox Business Network. He joins us to talk a little bit more about this.
Yes.
So expected?
Yes, these were announced. They go into effect today. It was China's answer to our steel and aluminum tariffs on their cheap steel dumping. The big news is obviously percolating right now. The U.S. Trade Commission trying to narrow down items that we would go after in terms between $50 and $60 billion worth of tariffs. Mostly aimed, I think, would be in the technology area, but other areas. But we heard last week a lot of overtures from China, and perhaps there's going to be a way to avert this getting going any further. But, you know, I think the thing most of the audience should understand is when they hear trade war, that's a misnomer. We're we're using tariffs. Tariffs are already employed by every country. And the irony, of course, is that China, India, South Korea, their tariffs are significantly higher than ours, and yet their economies are growing significantly faster than ours.
Right.
And they're protecting their best industries and their best companies. So, you know, we want to trade with the rest of the world, obviously. By the same token, we want to make sure it's smart and fair.
And it's been something that President Trump has talked about, even way back on the campaign trail.
Oh, absolutely. This is not new. You know, when Wall Street initially swooned on the news, you know, it was so interesting to me. It was just sort of, certainly it was disingenuous to say, oh, well, it came out of left field. No, it didn't come out of left field. Well, the way he handled it, the way he announced it, it was sort of the elitist class pushing back back because the status quo does work for a lot of people, including a lot of American corporations, like a General Motors. They make cars now. They have one of the hottest SUVs they make in China and ship to America. That's great for General Motors. It's great for the Chinese factory worker that makes it. It's good for maybe even for the American consumer, but it's not good for that American worker who can't make the product.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because you hear trade war and people immediately ask, well, who does it impact? Does it impact the consumer? Does it impact the businesses? Who does it impact most?
Again, we should all know right now that every country uses tariffs already, so we're already in a trade war. We have been fighting with one hand behind our backs. I'll give you an example where the only place we fight like smart. Pickup trucks. We charge 25% tariffs on trucks coming into this country. Guess what? Consequently, hundreds of thousands of Americans work in the pickup truck industry, and it's keeping our autos alive. There's no doubt that prices could go up if it gets crazy, if it gets out of this world. But China is stealing $600 billion a year from our companies, mostly in trade secrets and technology. We'd like to level the playing field. We want greater access to the market, and we'd like them to stop dumping cheap products that are subsidized by their government. All very reasonable requests.
Trade secrets and technology, how do you level the market there?
One thing they can do is that China forces large corporations to go into joint ventures with their domestic companies. They make them do this.
But we don't make them do that
here. Of course not. The same General Motors, when they wanted to do business in China, they forced them to open plants here. When we want foreign companies to work here, we offer them enormous discounts. We're giving Foxconn hundreds of millions of dollars in discounts to bring their business here. That's fine. That's what competition really is. It's the exact. That's competition in America. Over there, though, it's something totally different. It's extortion if you want to be an American company doing business in China.
Well, let's move on to the second topic, Amazon and President Trump and the Postal Service. What do you make of that?
Listen, I know that there's a two-pronged thing here. Obviously, President Trump, I think, has a lot of reasons to be upset with the Washington Post. It is just a mean-spirited publication. Every single day takes, I think, unwarranted shots at the president and conservatives. Having said that, and Jeff Bezos, we should let the audience know that he owns the Washington Post and he's the CEO of Amazon. Amazon cut a real good deal with the U.S. Postal Service in 2013. The U.S. Postal Service was losing billions of dollars, and it sounded like a good deal, except they fixed their costs at a certain level. Now that's taken off. You know, they got to pay their workers time and a half. They got to pay for the shipping. So Amazon is getting an amazing deal. Here's the irony of it. Lawmakers put into this whole thing a sort of stipulation where the post office can't be competitive. They can't compete against FedEx or the UPS. So it limits what they can do. Amazon is piggybacking off of that. Now what they've announced is that they're going to go out there and create their own FedEx, their own UPS, after years of piggybacking off of the U.S. Postal Service in this amazing subsidy that they've been getting.
Right, but at the same time, the U.S. Postal Service is actually making money as a result of deliveries.
No one really knows.
Yeah.
I went through their earnings. They don't break it out. Now packaging is up, right? But the bottom line is a secret deal. No one's ever given the details on the deal. Many think they're losing money.
All right. Well, we will see. Find out what the secret is.
I'm trying.
Thank you, Charles.
Charles in charge. That man knows. Thank you, sir. President Trump telling Republicans, go nuclear if necessary and pass tougher immigration laws. Will that happen and when? We will find out. Plus, did you see this? Check it out. Roll it.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good! Enrique Ogunbowale wins the national championship.
That's beautiful. That's a Hail Mary right there, huh? Take that back to touchdown Jesus. An amazing last-minute game-winning shot.
Mexico has got to help us at the border. If they're not going to help us at the border, it's a very sad thing between two countries. Mexico has got to help us at the border. And a lot of people are coming in because they want to take advantage of DACA. And we're going to have to really see. They had a great chance. The Democrats blew it. They had a great chance. But we'll have to take a look.
Well, President Trump says that there will be no deal with Democrats on DACA, and he is turning up the heat on Republicans to get tough immigration laws passed. The president tweeting this morning, Congress must immediately pass border legislation, use nuclear option if necessary to stop the massive inflow of drugs and people. Border Patrol agents and ICE are great, but the weak, dim laws don't allow them to do their job. Act now, Congress. Our country is being stolen. Owen. And Katie Pavlich is editor of townhall.com and a Fox News contributor, and Richard Goodstein is a Democratic political consultant and former advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. They both join us to discuss. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Sure, Heather.
Appreciate it. I will start with you. In reference to Katie, I'm going to start with you on this. With the tweets that he sent out today, what do you think?
Well, I think it makes it obvious that President Trump is fed up with Democrats claiming they care about DACA recipients, but not accepting his offer of 1.6 million people being covered by an amnesty under DACA, including children who brought here by their parents and their parents. And if you look at the details of what he's actually saying, he's moving away from comprehensive immigration reform and moving into strictly focusing on the border. And he's absolutely right about Mexico. Mexico has a vested interest in allowing illegal immigration to continue into the United States from their country, because illegal immigrants send billions of dollars back to Mexico every single year, and they like the fact that criminal aliens who have committed violent crimes are being protected here in the United States. And in the past, they've actually complained about us deporting those violent criminals back to where they belong. So the president is right about wanting to bolster border security, doing more, and it's going to be up to Republicans to make sure that he gets what he wants on border security.
Richard, I looked up some of the additional numbers that Katie was just talking about. Illegal immigrants each year, they cost over $115 billion in benefits and services. So it makes sense what Katie's saying.
You know, it would be nice if the president could get his facts straight, not just for himself, but for the country. You know, Heather, Katie knows it, everybody watching the show knows that DACA applies only to people who were here since 2007. So him on Easter, a day of reflection, when maybe the golden rule is something people should take into account, to say these people want to take advantage of DACA is not just ignorant, and that doesn't make him look bad, but it makes the country look bad. The same way when he bragged about deceiving the Prime Minister of Canada. It just doesn't behoove the United States to have its leaders say things that are demonstrably untrue. On his signature issue, he said that not only was going to be a wall, but Mexico was going to pay for it. And now who's going to pay for it? The military. That's where he wants the funds to come from our troops. So, look,
I want to address
I
this
think we
issue
need to do something. Democrats agree that we need to do something about immigrants. We got 68 votes in the Senate several years ago. But what he's talking about now just doesn't make sense.
Well, look, I want to address Richard's point.
Okay.
He's arguing that President Trump, when he said today at the White House that people are crossing the border to take advantage of DACA today, and it is true that whenever Washington, D.C., whether it's Republicans or Democrats, start talking about any kind of amnesty, we saw this under Obama with the child immigration crisis. We've seen it now. We had the DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen testifying just 3 weeks ago about how they've seen an increase in family units, meaning parents and young children coming over the border as Congress, as the White House were talking about DACA. It might not apply strictly to, quote, DACA recipients, but illegal immigrants see this as an opportunity to get in the country knowing that it is very unlikely they will be deported, especially if they come here with children and as family units. So the president is actually accurate when he says those comments.
And Richard, 80% of these specific immigrants coming in this particular caravan, they're from Honduras. Do you think that they actually know the details of DACA?
No, but here's the other thing, Heather.
Amnesty.
They're coming as a caravan, right? They're coming as a caravan. If we're serious about stopping them, how hard is that? We have cameramen embedded with them. We obviously can see them from the air. So are we really saying, if the president is serious about protecting the borders, that we can't keep people out who don't belong here? You know, he talked about months ago about a bill of love, about doing this with heart. Okay? And then all of a sudden, as the walls are caving in on him politically, he has to go pick an other, and the other in this case is these people coming in from Honduras.
No, Richard, but seriously, why didn't Democrats take the deal on the table of 1.6 million illegal immigrants getting amnesty, a path to citizenship, in return for a wall, in the end, to the visa lottery program and the other visa programs that are causing problems here with national security in the United States? Why did Democrats not take that deal? It seems like the most generous offer that's been placed on the table. Is it because Democrats want to keep this as a political tool to accuse Republicans of being anti-immigrant and racist in future elections? That sure is what it looks like.
Let me answer that. So there was a bill that got 68 votes in the Senate not long ago that got votes from Orrin Hatch, from John Hoeven from North Dakota, from Lamar Alexander. These are not pinko commie people who are supporting a comprehensive immigration bill. We've had a bill. It's gotten votes. It would have cleared the House had the leadership allowed it to come up.
DACA?
So this notion that somehow Democrats are against this is really
Democrats
had 6 months to come up with some sort of compromise, and they were not able to do that because that's why we're here right now. Thank you both for joining us. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you, Heather.
We'll see what happens with the caravan.
Yep.
New reaction to all this coming up. Ari Fleischer is back, former press secretary of President George W. Bush, stopping by next hour, so stay tuned for that when it happens. In the meantime, what a cool finish this was. Notre Dame winning the women's national title at the buzzer. Check it out.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good! Enrique Ogunbowale wins the national championship for Notre Dame.
Check that thing up there. Sinking a 3 to put the Fighting Irish on top of Mississippi State. They win it. She also drilled a last-second stunner to carry her team to victory Friday night over UConn. Cool stuff. Meanwhile, on the men's side, Sister Jean had an awesome run. Loyola of Chicago, their Cinderella run came to an end in the men's tourney against Michigan on Saturday night. Red-hot Michigan team came from behind second half to punch a ticket to the finals, which will go down. Hit it, Wagner. Hit it. There's tonight, they face Villanova for the title game. Villanova knocking off Kansas significantly.
That was a good game.
It's a good game. Villanova came out red hot.
They really did. Two #1 seeds, and they beat them pretty
that's right.
badly.
So you got a 9 o'clock tip-off tonight. Do you like Michigan or do you like Villanova?
I'm going with Villanova.
I am too.
Yeah.
That's who I picked in the beginning.
But we need to find out who Sister Jean is pulling for.
Yeah.
Maybe go with that team.
Right. I think her heart stays with the Ramblers.
That's true. Well, some brand new